At Pan M360, I am with Ruben Zara from Malta. We're reaching him at Malta, and we will talk about Kafka's Insect. Kafka's Insect is a immersive concept designed and composed by Ruben Zara, and that will be performed on February 17th at the Satosphere of the Société des Arts Technologiques in Montreal, in the context of Montréal Nouvelle Musique, presented by the Société de musique contemporaine du Québec. Hi, Ruben.
Hello.
So, Ruben, you imagined a sort of immersive concept, uh, a pianist, Tricia Don Williams, who's also from Malta,
Yes.
and she will perform piano with electronic environment, with analogic synthesizers. We talk, for example, the Moog Mother 32, if I
Yep.
understood, and the subject is it's an evocation of the famous novel from Franz Kafka, La
Yeah.
Metamorphosis. And we call this show, which is an immersive show, because there will be video also, there will be a lot of images. So it's not only, well, it's not a concert, it's a sort of immersive experience with audiovisual that will be presented in Montreal. So let's talk, Ruben, about the origins of this inspiration and how did you develop this concept?
Right. So this is a relatively new project. Actually, it was a COVID victim. It was planned to premiere in 2020, and then, of course, because of the pandemic, it got pushed back. But the concept is to present the narrative, the storyline of the Metamorphosis, Franz Kafka, published in 1915, but through sound design and music. So I chose those moments in the story that represent some level of sound, where Kafka actually refers to sound. And there are several moments that usually would go probably unnoticed to some extent. For example, there's a moment when Gregor's father, Gregor is the character, the main character who's transformed into an insect, is hurling apples towards Gregor. There's a moment where there's a rain pelting on the glass, there's a glass vial which shatters on the floor. So I focused on those moments and included the music with the sound design of these tableaus to narrate the story. So there is no dialogue. Most people are familiar with the story, so they will be able to follow the narrative. And there is a very strong focus on the videography. So the story was shot through video art techniques, representing the characters of the story, and also some tableaus which focus on the transformation of the insect. So it is a music journey through the narrative of the Metamorphosis, with a soundtrack of live piano and analog synthesizers, with a focus on the Moog Mother 32. So it has a vintage sound, which in a way also reflects the aesthetic of the video, which, by the way, is shot on a vintage lens from 1838.
So this is why you've chosen a vintage sound. Uh, Choosing, for example, synthesizer, analog synthesizers, this
Correct.
Moog Mother 32, and probably other devices of this period.
Yes, well, it's mainly the mother 32 in terms of the timbre of the sound. So it's an oscillator which goes through filters. But I am also using modern algorithms and platforms like the Ableton. Everything is going through Ableton Live, which is a DAW, a digital workstation, which allows me to create more layers of the analog sound. But also this analog sound, I think, goes really well with the identity of the insect. It was a challenge I think it's always a challenge for every filmmaker who tries to tell the story on how to feature the insect. Do you do it through stop motion? Do you do it through puppetry? Do you have a costume? And what I ended up doing is actually importing large beetles from England, from the UK, from London, and shooting the insect in a stop motion fashion. So I think that the project is also interesting visually, and will hopefully also attract an audience that is not just interested in music, but is also interested in videography, photography, and filmmakers.
And also literature.
Yes, of course. That's right.
Yeah.
So it ticks a lot of boxes.
Why have you chosen this specific novel to build this project? Well, we all know every student in college or university read or maybe was suggested to read Metamorphosis.
Well, that is actually one of the main reasons, because most people have read the story. It is a short story. So it's a quick read. It's one of the most accessible novels of Franz Kafka. So most people know the story. So even with the videography, I do not really have to spoon feed what's happening, because most people know what's happening. On the other hand, it is not, I wouldn't say that it is sort of commercial. So it still has its own dimension as literature. I did not want to go on something, mainstream that becomes a cliche. But I think that the story had the right ingredients in terms of accessibility, but also because I was looking for these moments of sound. And actually, I was auditioning other ideas. For example, I was also considering Edgar Allan Poe, some of the short stories of Edgar Allan Poe. Which would have been also a strong candidate for this type of project, with vintage videography and vintage lenses. But then when I read the Metamorphosis again for the fifth time, probably, I realized that there was so much sound content that I could use, in combination with my music for this project.
Yeah, Edgar Allan Poe could be the next project.
Yes, in fact, I am already thinking of a next project with Poe.
Let's talk about the piano proposal. How did you compose for Trisha Down Williams? Did you have this specific musician in mind when you composed it?
Well, Trisha Dawn Williams happens to be my partner, so I have her in mind by default. But having said that, the music is very demanding and quite challenging, and there are pieces where she really had to struggle and learn to do for the piece. But it is, Trisha Dawn. She is very familiar with my aesthetic. My music has a strong rhythmic character. So it leans towards these textures of Bartok, Stravinsky. I enjoy the rhythmic polyrhythm of the sort of 20th century, of course, transposing it on a contemporary idiom. So it takes a certain breed of pianists to play my music who are very comfortable with complex rhythmic structures.
Mm-hmm. The stylistic references of your music are broad. You're not coming specifically from contemporary music schools. You're referring to analog music from pop electronic in a way, and sometimes also with contemporary music when we talk, or modern music when you talk about the piano proposal. So you're not stuck in one specific aesthetics, don't you?
That's very true. I really embrace the plurilinguistic age that we are living in, where it is practically impossible to just listen to one style of music. But I really embrace this polylinguistic context because inspiration comes from many different angles. Sometimes I'm just watching YouTube and there's a sound which intrigues me, and I research the artist. And so even in my music, my music is really inspired by many different genres, which are eventually deconstructed and transposed into my own aesthetic. But I'm also, for example, very inspired by hard rock and heavy metal because there is very complex riff structures, especially when you listen to bands like Dream Theater. It's like listening to Stravinsky on acid, and I find that very inspiring. And it's also it's basically a springboard. It's a raw material that personally I transpose into my aesthetic. Bartok used to do it with folk music. Gershwin used to do it with jazz music. So, it's very common for composers to adopt ideas from different territories and sort of bring them into your own aesthetic, your own idiom.
You also are inspired by metal music, which is totally normal. Now we see a lot of links between metal and symphonic and classical, modern, or actual music.
Absolutely. I'm very much looking forward to the production and performance in Montreal because usually we present this project we project on an inflatable spherical screen. So when I tour with this project in Europe, I travel with literally what looks like a 2-meter beach ball. It's a spherical screen, which is inflatable. And you can see some of those photos also on the website. So usually the mise en scène, the setup is you have this spherical screen in the center, 2 meters across, and the piano on one side and the analog synthesizers on the other side. So there is this sort of central focus, this video presence in the middle. But at the Stratosphere in Montreal, it would be, I think it's going to be amazing because it's a 360 180 projection and the video will be completely immersive. So I'm very much looking forward to this very unique opportunity.
We are too. What are your next projects, Ruben?
Well, I'm my current this year. I start touring with a children's opera that was premiered in Salzburg. It is actually an origami opera. All the costumes and mise en scène are made from Japanese origami pop-up paper sculptures. So this year, this production has been booked in 4 different countries, and we have other 6 countries lined up next season. So I think that will be the highlight for this year. And I'm currently composing a violin concerto, which I have to interrupt. So I come to Montreal, and I will then keep composing when I get back.
Excellent. So in our case, we're looking forward to attend this very interesting concept of spectacle, of show, of concert, immersive concert called Kafka's Insect, February 17 at the Stratosphere in the context of Montréal Nouvelle Musique presented by the Société de Musique Contemporaine du Québec. Ruben Zara, I thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.